the 5-axis image stabilization that it has is absolutely amazing. The thing is super durable, lots of customization. So hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Dad's Den Tech Reviews. My name is Brian and I'm here to review some cool tech for you. Today we're taking a look at the Olympus OM-D E-M1 Mark II DSLR camera. Now this isn't a new camera, it's been around since 2016. I've been using it for 3+ years, so we're going to find out if it's worth considering as a new camera purchase. Okay, before we get into the review, hit that subscribe button so you become part of the Dad's Den family and you don't miss out on any of our future tech reviews. And as always, the link to the products we review and use here at Dad's Den will be down in the description for you to go ahead and purchase. So the OM-D E-M1 Mark II is the second generation of the flagship offering from Olympus, and they released it in 2016. Micro Four Thirds is known for its compact size and weight and smaller lenses, but the performance has always lagged behind the full censored and larger censored offerings from Canon and Nikon and etc. But when they released the OM-D E-M1 and then subsequently the Mark II a couple of years later, that performance gap was much lessened, but also the price gap was also diminished. So 4 years after its introduction, is this camera still worthy of being on your list of options to consider when purchasing? Let's find out. So it's got, as I mentioned, it's the Micro Four Thirds format, which means it has a 1.33 inch sensor, which of course is smaller than the full frame offerings from Canon and Nikon. It's a 20 megapixel live MOS sensor, and this next feature is one of the biggest. This is its killer feature. The 5-axis image stabilization that it has is absolutely amazing. It has in-body image stabilization, which means that the sensor is actually stabilized inside the body of the camera instead of the lenses being stabilized. On Canon and Nikon cameras, the lenses are bigger and heavier, more expensive because they have the image stabilization built into them instead of into the body of the camera. With the Olympus, the in-body image stabilization is 5-axis, which means if the camera senses motion or movement in any of those 5 axes, it'll adjust the sensor and actually move it to compensate for that motion. And it works really, really well, especially when it's coupled with their Pro lenses that have image stabilization also built into them. So when they're combine the stabilization of the lens and the body, it's absolutely amazing. It's really, really good when it's just the body and one of the regular lenses that aren't quite as expensive. It's still very, very good, but it's not as good as when you get a Pro lens that also has the stabilization built into it. So it has a 121-point hybrid autofocus system, and it uses the phase detection and contrast detection. That's one of the big features that they introduced with the EM1 line of cameras. And the autofocus is very, very good. Never really had any issues, except for there's one exception that we'll talk about a little bit later to the autofocus performance, but it's overall very, very good. So you get 60 frames per second burst shooting at single focus and 18 frames per second at continuous focus. That's using electronic shutter. If using the mechanical shutter, it's 15 frames per second on single focus and 10 frames per second on continuous, which is pretty impressive. Okay, it's got the 3-inch articulating LCD screen, which comes in really handy when you're shooting off angles. I like this much better than the ones that flip up kind of like this and only go the one direction. They maybe just tilt, but they don't articulate. With this one, it comes out so you can have a view off to the side. You can go like this and shoot down if you're holding it low, or if you want to shoot it up high, you can just aim it down, and you can go way up and still see it perfectly straight on. And you can of course flip it all the way around and just have it like a regular viewfinder. What I really like about this is that if you flip it this way and close it, it's got a hard plastic protector which keeps the screen from getting scratched, which I really, really like that. It doesn't just have the LCD screen, it has the electronic viewfinder as well, which comes in handy on super sunny days, something like that, where the glare on the screen is too much. So you just look through the regular viewfinder, just like a mirrored SLR. You can see the framing of your picture much better than on the LCD a lot of times. The LCD I think is million dots, and the viewfinder is 2.4 megapixels. So really good quality. It's amazing looking through that viewfinder, the quality you see, considering it's a screen. It looks like you're looking directly through, like on a mirrored SLR. Okay, now onto the video features. The frame rates that it shoots, it does have the ultra high definition 4K cinema 4K, but it only shoots out at 24 frames per second. So if you're looking for something that does 60 frames per second at 4K, this camera isn't going to do that for you. But at full HD, it'll shoot up to 60 frames per second. There's a bunch of different levels of frame rates and picture quality, video quality that you can select from. It's pretty customizable all around. And as a side note, I really like the menu system that Olympus has. It's pretty intuitive. Okay, and as far as the build, it's a weather sealed. It's dust and moisture resistant. It's not waterproof. It's not like IP68 water resistant, but it does. It will withstand. This thing's been rained on and all kinds of other things, but it's weather sealed. Their Pro lenses are also weather sealed, so if you use those together, you got a pretty solid sealed up package. Okay, it has the dual SD cards right here, side load, which is really nice because you can do a couple of different things. You can have one card dedicated for still pictures and one card dedicated for video. The advantage there is that if you're shooting a real high frame rate on video, you want to make sure you get an SD card that can support that transfer rate, like a class 10 SD card. Or even for the photography, for stills, if you're shooting their 60 frame per second burst mode, you need to have a card that can get a lot of information quickly, or else it's just going to bog down. You won't be able to shoot the frame rate you want to do. Okay, and the last feature I want to point out is the grip on this camera is really comfortable for me anyway. I have medium to large hands. Some of the cameras, especially this is a smaller camera body because it's the micro four thirds format, some of those can be a little bit hard to hold because they don't have a lot of real estate for grip. There's so many buttons and controls and everything, but the grip on this thing is really good. I mean, look how far that sticks out, and I can wrap all the way to that second knuckle, and it's just a really good grip. So this finger doesn't even have to be on, and you can have it free to hit the button, hit controls, or whatever you need to do. And there's an additional grip on the back here for your thumb to rest on. So especially when you have a bigger, heavier lens like this one, that extra grip is really nice. So that's an overview of the features of the camera. So how does it perform? That's probably the most important thing about a camera. How does it perform? I'm going to start right off with the best thing. The image stabilization, as I talked about before on this camera, is absolutely astonishing. It has the in-body image stabilization. If you get the Pro lenses, they're also stabilized. There's a button. You can turn the stabilization on and off. I always have it on. I'm not sure why you would want that off, but it is pretty amazing because it basically eliminates the need for having a gimbal. A gimbal for a big camera like this, a heavier camera, is cumbersome and expensive. But having the 5-axis image stabilization kind of eliminates the need for that gimbal. And the other thing for still photography, the image stabilization is so good, you can take handheld long exposure shots, like a 1 second, 2 second exposure, and it won't be blurry. It's absolutely amazing. The nice thing about that is it makes up for the smaller sensored camera for the 4/3 format. Not great for low light situations, but if you're taking a still and you can have longer exposures, you can kind of compensate for that a little bit. Now the next thing for performance is the Olympus lenses have always been well regarded. They make good glass, and they have the Pro line, which is more expensive, is stabilized, but their regular lenses also are really good glass, and they're good lenses, and they're nice and small and compact, which is kind of the nice thing about the 4/3 system. Okay, so this is the 12 to 100 millimeter equivalent. Well, actually not the equivalent, it's the 12 to 100. The equivalent, I think, is 24 to 200, the 35 millimeter equivalent. But it's a nice zoom range, and it's stabilized, and it's pretty heavy, and it's pretty expensive lens. But that's the nice thing about Olympus, is they have their regular lenses. They're not image stabilized, but it's very good glass, good quality lens. But look how much smaller and lighter it is. So if you put that on instead of this big one, it kind of transforms your camera into something way more portable. Where do I line? Where's the red dot? There it is. Okay. So now you have a really nice compact camera. Certainly not something I'd call pocketable, but you can fit that easily into a backpack or whatever. It's nice and light for selfie and vlogging and stuff like that. And again, for vlogging, this camera is really, really good because it has the articulating view screen that can turn around. You can see it, change angles depending on the sunlight and the glare and things like that. But yeah, the lenses are definitely one of the pluses to having an Olympus camera, because they have a really big selection and really good quality lenses. Okay, another thing I really love about this camera, and it's kind of another thing that Olympus has as a reputation, is really good picture color quality and balance right out of the camera. If you shoot your stills in JPEG mode, the pictures come out. I've never really had to do anything in post to have to adjust the pictures, except for maybe contrast or things like that, but the colors are always really good. Olympus cameras have good JPEG color quality. Okay, now a couple of things that are not ideal, a couple of cons to this camera. The low light performance isn't great because of the small sensor. It's hard to get a lot of light onto it. The image stabilization helps because you can have a longer exposure and get more light onto the sensor that way. But if you're looking for flat out low light performance, this probably isn't the camera for you. And you may want to look to a bigger sensored camera. Now the other thing that I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the review as one of the exceptions to the really, really good performance of this camera is the autofocus. The autofocus is good in most situations, but if the subject is moving quickly, it doesn't sometimes keep up. The autofocus just isn't quite as fast as some other cameras on the market, so that's something to keep in mind when you're deciding on which one to purchase. Okay, and lastly, under performance, we're going to talk about durability. So we're going to end on a high note on this camera with durability. I've had this thing for 3+ years, and I've used it pretty hard. My kids have used it pretty hard. It's been dropped, set down in the sand, rained on, licked by dogs, knocked against the side of my wheelchair, and it still performs just like the day it was new. I mean, the thing's a tank. So durability wise, I'd give it 100%, because after 3 years, the only thing that's happening is this grip is starting to peel off a little bit. The glue is just kind of separating, but after 3+ years, I have no problem with that, and that's something easily fixed. I can just put some glue on there and get it back just like new. So very high durability, so no complaints there. So let's talk about the price and where you can purchase this camera. Currently, it's selling for about $1,200. When it was new, it was $2,000 just for the body, and right now they're selling it for around $1,200 for the body. Lenses are not discounted. They still sell those for just as much as they did 4 years ago. You can buy it anywhere that cameras are sold, but we have a link for you down in the description. So if you go there, you can purchase through that link. So for $1,200 for everything you get with this camera, it's 4 years old. They have a current Mark III version of it, but that only has a couple of very minor upgrades that they're selling for $1,600. But for $1,200, this camera is a great value because you get the great image stabilization, you get the nice compact compact format in the Micro Four Thirds. Huge selection of lenses from Olympus. The thing is super durable, lots of customization. So with all that in mind, I would say this definitely gets the Dad's Den stamp of approval. So go ahead, put this on your list, put it on your top 3 list. I would say have no reservations about purchasing this camera. So that wraps up the review of the Olympus OM-D E-M1 Mark II, kind of the long-term review of it. I hope you enjoyed it, and please hit the subscribe button down below so you can join the Dad's Den family and so you don't miss out on any future Dad's Den tech reviews. Thanks for watching.